Before we get into this very bizarre plane story, I want to talk about this really quick. So, I'm coming to you all for help. I need a little help here about something I had seen in one of my most recent videos talking about all these junkyard fires seemingly happening left and right. All these older cars, older car parts, inventory just going up in flames during a very quote unquote coincidental time when they want to start putting all these new cars out that are completely controlled by the AI system. One of these most recent fires happened on the 17th over in Idaho, where over 9,000 cars were destroyed. This junkyard, which was owned and operated since the 1960s, will now have to close down due to what they said was a wildfire that came through and destroyed all these cars. But if you were to take a look at it, it looks like they were hit with some kind of dew. But some of you in the comment section of that video noticed something interesting as this news station was moving their camera throughout the junkyard. They slowly go by this one car that has a set of numbers on its door. It was almost like it was intentional, like they wanted us to notice these numbers. In a normal world, in a normal society, more than likely this would be nothing. But given the fact we're dealing with these news stories of this magnitude that do not seem natural, and the so-called powers that be and other groups love numerology, what could these numbers mean that were intentionally put in frame? 47 at the top, and then under it, 0, 2, 20, 40. So what are your best theories as to what these numbers could represent or mean? I mean, yeah, again, they could mean nothing, but these junkyard fire stories are very weird. Matter of fact, just yesterday, there was another fire, this time in Rochester, New York, at an auto surplus and repair shop on Borough Street that sold used car parts. And as you can guess, all the car parts inside this shop were completely destroyed. But moving on, this is a very bizarre story. It involves a plane, and I haven't spoken about planes in quite some time, but this event happened back on June 24th. This involved an Air Canada plane that was traveling from Newark, New Jersey to Halifax, Nova Scotia. Suddenly, the plane started to swerve, and quoting this passenger here, they said, "The moment the plane swerved, I knew something was wrong because it was not turbulence. It really felt like someone had jilted the controls, and then it happened over and over again." One of the flight attendants entered the cockpit frantically, and a few moments later, he was dragging out one of the pilots out of the cockpit onto the aisleway of the airplane. Apparently, this pilot was having some sort of medical emergency which led to a seizure. All of a sudden, this passenger and four others started to restrain him as the co-pilot took over flying the aircraft. The passenger realized that the pilot was out of control physically, not violently, like it was clear that he was not in control of his faculties and needed to be restrained. But the thing is, it's well known if somebody is having a medical emergency, a seizure at that, you do not restrain them. Holding somebody down or restraining them will not stop the seizure. Matter of fact, it could even make it worse or cause some type of other injury. It even says that right here on the same exact article talking about this incident. The CDC advises not to hold down someone who is potentially experiencing a seizure or stopping their movements, as this could cause injury. But get this, because here's where things get even more bizarre. This passenger went on to say, "We worked to get him under control. It was a fairly strenuous 40 minutes of keeping him down and using as many seatbelts as we could to restrain his legs, arms, and chest." Also, they say the seizure lasted for about 40 minutes. That sounds like a very long time for a seizure. One person left a comment on this news article saying, "Kind of a weird story because it sounds like they were fighting him the whole time. Do seizures last 40 minutes? No, a single seizure lasting 40 minutes is not typical. Most seizures last from 30 seconds to 2 minutes. What? I mean, in this passenger's own words, he said that the pilot was not out of control violently. So why are the passengers doing all this, restraining this pilot with all these seatbelts? Now, one could say that maybe these passengers have no medical experience and that's why they're doing this. But come to find out, there was a registered nurse among them that was helping out. This passenger told ABC News that a registered nurse assisted the pilot as well as helping to direct passengers. He also praised the flight attendants for remaining calm through the incident. But for convenience sake, because I guess it doesn't make much sense for a registered nurse not to know that, to not restrain someone during a seizure, the passengers later came out and said this.
So, Rodney, we should note that, we don't know exactly what the pilot's medical problem was at this point, but doctors advise against, holding people down if they appear to be having a seizure. But there was no doctor on board the plane. There was a nurse. So how did you all decide, how to handle this and what to do? I mean, it was a split-second decision. Was the nurse guiding you at all or making suggestions? Tell us what happened there in the moment.
Yeah, I thought she was a nurse actually, but turns out this lady had been a lifeguard. So that was the most medical experience there was. But her brother was someone who had epilepsy, and she was very competent in the situation. We knew you shouldn't restrain someone who is having or has had a seizure, but it was very dangerous for him and for the people around. The jet was so small, and he was flailing and kicking, and this gentleman was very, very strong. I mean, people are strong in that kind of situation because of adrenaline, but on a normal day, this guy was very strong.
He was throwing himself against the window. Um, and it was just like something had to be done. He had to be restrained in some sort of a way. And I think these guys made the right choice in doing that.
Wow. Okay. So then, and either one of you can describe this. How did the pilot finally calm down? How did things settle? Did he come to? Was there any kind of communication? It probably happened so fast, but how did you, bring everything to a calm moment?
Yeah, so me and about four other guys managed to get multiple seatbelts around his ankles, his wrists, his chest, his waist, and we still had to physically hold him in place for about half an hour. And he was not coherent. He was not able to respond to us. He was just yelling at the top of his lungs. And then by the time we landed on the ground in Boston, all of a sudden he started to realize something really bad had happened, and he wasn't aware of his surroundings. And we were trying to reassure him and calm him down. And then by the time the first responders got onto the plane, he was more or less answering their questions, but I would say he was still very confused with what had happened.
Before I let you go, have you been able to talk to him? Do you have an update? Do you know how he's doing?
No, no update. We hope he's doing well. We know that, this was out of his control.
So yeah, there has been absolutely no update as to who this pilot is. We don't know his name, and we don't know what happened to him on this flight. They said he had a seizure, but then we're hearing all this where he's even throwing himself against the windows of the plane. Some are even suggesting that this isn't even a real news story. I mean, I do find it odd. There is a lack of video footage coming out of this plane. I mean, we have all this happening and nobody has any video footage whatsoever. That is kind of weird. But it is also possible too, this pilot may have saw something and he panics, kind of like what we see when it comes to a lot of these other people that panic when they see something on these flights, MFers that are not real, and he had a full breakdown. They said this went on for about 40 minutes, but they still said he had a seizure. Never heard of anybody having a seizure for 40 minutes before. At most, the seizure should have lasted for only a few minutes, and after it ends, they go into a period where they act drowsy, confused. There are extremely rare ones where they can last more than 5 minutes, even up to 40 minutes, but people who are experiencing this usually don't throw themselves around the room, let alone keep throwing themselves at a window, flailing their arms and legs. As some people pointed out, there's 61 passengers on this flight. You have the flight attendants, you have the other pilots, but all the news agencies seem to just be interviewing this one guy and at most his wife as well. Here's the same passenger again giving another interview with another agency.
Flight attendant was dragging the captain out by his armpits, and he fell down on the floor in front of me. And at that time, he didn't look like he was breathing, and they were screaming, "He's not breathing!" And his face was like gray, green, and I just was like, I gotta get out of the way. So I dashed to the back of the plane where my wife and two boys were. For some reason, I was sitting in the front. Um, and then I was just stricken. I looked at my wife and I could barely talk. And I was like, the captain's dead. But then within a couple seconds, he was violently reacting. And I want to stress violently as in physically violently, but he was not angry or coherent. Like it was not a clearly not an intentional kind of reaction. He was kicking and flailing and hollering and
Again, weird story, nothing makes sense. People who have seizures typically do not throw themselves against the window because they have involuntary muscle spasms and things like that. They usually fall to the ground. We'll probably never hear of this pilot ever again, or if we do, it'll probably be somebody pretending to be him to go along with this narrative. But I'm going to lean with the theory that he probably saw something on this flight that caused him to panic. And it's like, where's all the video footage?